Berlin won an Oscar for a song they didn't even want to record. A song that seemed untouchable, almost bigger than the movie it was written for. But for Berlin, this wasn't quite the dream it looked like from the outside. How does a track meant to lift a movie end up defining a band forever? And what happens when that same track feels less like a victory and more like a cage? In 1986, Top Gun had nearly everything. The fighter jets, the adrenaline, Harold Faltermeyer's soaring anthem. But the producers knew they still lacked a centerpiece. So Giorgio Moroder was called in to write a love song. And when he handed it to Berlin, it seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. What followed was fame on a scale they could never imagine, but also tensions that would leave the band divided. Welcome to Los Angeles during the late 1970s. Enter any club and the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the bass shakes the floor. You're crammed into a dim Los Angeles club, shoulder to shoulder with strangers who don't know it yet, but they're watching a band on the edge of something. The neon glow barely cuts through the haze as Terry Nunn steps onto the stage with black leather, platinum hair catching the light like a blade. Behind her, synthesizers hum alive, weaving together with guitars and a sound that feels futuristic, dangerous, and irresistible. This is Berlin. They aren't chart toppers yet, just another name in the feverish new wave underground. Nights like these are their proving grounds. We're talking about those almost sweaty, raw nights that electrified the soul. The crowd feeds on every beat, but when the music stops, reality hits harder. Terry later admitted, "We were broke and no one in the industry really believed in us. Every show felt like it could be our last shot." Still, they kept playing, shaping their identity in the shadow of bigger acts, chasing something beyond survival. But their biggest break wouldn't come from the stage, as Destiny storms in with impossible choices.
The new album in just a little bit, but first, here's an unforgettable hit that catapulted them to fame.
The year was now 1986, and inside a modest Los Angeles studio, Berlin's fate shifted on a single cassette tape. Giorgio Moroder, the legendary composer behind countless hits, walked in with something new and pressed play. A slow, pulsing synth filled the room, "Take My Breath Away." Berlin felt like it was an alien language. This wasn't the jagged, edgy sound they'd built in smoky clubs and underground sets. This was lush, cinematic, almost a little too polished. The band's unease was obvious. "It doesn't even sound like us," one member whispered. They had always fought for their identity, their grit, their edge. Could they surrender that for a love ballad written by someone else? Then Terry Nunn steps to the mic, headphones on, demo track rolling. When she reached the chorus, her voice cut through the doubt. Later, she admitted, "I felt chills. I knew it was bigger than us." Silence followed the final note and no one said a word. Not after either. It was recorded anyway, kind of knowing it would change their lives forever. Moroder agreed and kept her version, whereas the rest of Berlin weren't even told. In fact, Crawford later admitted, "I never played it, I never heard it, I never had anything to do with it." The band's name was stamped on the record, but their fingerprints were nowhere to be found. And then, in a flash of afterburners, the world took notice.
What is it with you? Just want to serve my country, be the best fighter pilot in the Navy, sir.
In the summer of 1986, you could hear theaters erupting with the roar of jet engines. Top Gun was so much more than a movie, it was an event. Crowds lined up around city blocks, popcorn in hand, ready to see Tom Cruise rocket into stardom. And weaving through every dogfight, every kiss, was Berlin's voice. "Take My Breath Away." What most fans never knew was how close Berlin came to missing the chance. Giorgio Moroder had shopped the song around before it landed in their hands. Bryan Adams was offered the track first, but turned it down, refusing to be tied to a film he thought was too militaristic. Even Toto was considered, but when the band learned only Joseph Williams' vocals would be used, they walked away. Berlin said yes, and the gamble paid off. The song roared like the F-14 Tomcat on screen, climbing to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. By early 1987, it stood on the stage at the Academy Awards. When Giorgio Moroder accepted the Oscar for Best Original Song, Berlin was barely mentioned. The spotlight was theirs, yet somehow not theirs at all. Fans cheered and critics raved, but inside, some of the band still wondered, what if Berlin had insisted on their own song instead? Would history remember them differently? Because behind the glittering trophies, cracks in the foundation began to spread.
Nicely done. Berlin, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Crawford. John, how are you? Thank you.
The spotlight that once felt electric soon burned too bright now. By 1987, Berlin was no longer celebrated as the bold synth-pop band of Los Angeles. Instead, critics sneered, labeling them as sellouts. The underground faithful who once packed clubs whispered that Berlin had traded their edge for Hollywood gloss. Inside the band, tension sharpened. At rehearsals, the energy literally turned combative. A guitarist snapped during one session, slamming his pick against the strings. "We're not Berlin anymore, we're just the Take My Breath Away band." Terry Nunn tried to defend the song, reminding them of the chills she felt the first time she sang it. But even later, she admitted, it didn't feel like ours anymore. Success came, sure, but it wasn't our success. The irony couldn't be crueler. The Oscar had crowned them, yet it carved their identity into a single track they hadn't written. The music that once belonged to them now belonged to the world. And then, just as the applause peaked, silence swallowed the band whole. By 1987, the very song that had carried Berlin to the top was also the wedge that broke them apart. Within a year of winning an Oscar, the band was taken apart. Arguments now bled into exhaustion, and exhaustion bled into departure. Berlin, as fans knew them, was no more. Terry Nunn struck out on her own, chasing a solo career with the same determination that had carried her through smoky clubs years earlier. Other members scattered into side projects, never reaching the same heights. The band's name faded from marquees, but their ballad refused to vanish. At weddings across the globe, you can see couples still swaying to Take My Breath Away. Radio DJs still cued it on late-night love song hours. And every time Top Gun replayed on TV, the song resurrected Berlin's ghost. Looking back years later, Nunn confessed with a bittersweet smile, "It was the greatest gift and the greatest curse. That song gave us everything, and it took us away, too." Berlin disappeared with their song never ceasing to play. And as the years passed, their triumph twisted into bittersweet memory. Today, Take My Breath Away is etched into the soundtrack of film history as an Oscar-winning ballad that still drifts across dance floors and late-night radio waves. It's remembered as one of the greatest love songs ever written for cinema. And yet, Berlin's wider story faded into the shadows. Their earlier catalog, the sharp synth anthems, the edgy underground energy, was eclipsed by a single song that they hadn't written themselves. Ask most listeners about Berlin, and the answer is instant. Oh, the Take My Breath Away band. The irony is absolutely striking. A song that gifted them immortality also stole their identity. It turned living, breathing artists into a footnote beneath a cinematic love story. Terry Nunn also admitted, "It will always define us, whether we want it to or not." Feel the gravity of those words for a moment, and it will send literal chills down the spine. And so the question lingers ever so subtly. What if Berlin had been remembered for their whole catalog, not just one Oscar moment? In the end, they became both blessed and cursed. Forever remembered, yet never truly seen. Now, after knowing all that, would you say the cost of immortality was worth it? Let us know in the comments.